Welcome back to the NIO Summit live stream. We have Jeff Giddens and we have Eric Allen here for a little time of question and answer. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat box on the right side of your screen. Send those in, and I'm monitoring them right here. We'll be able to ask those live, so feel free to send those in. Jeff, Eric, thank you so much for your talks. Thank you for your sessions. I think one cool thing we can talk about that you both touched on in some different ways is really developing kind of a culture of optimization and testing. Jeff, I know you have a lot of experience trying to do that with different clients that we work with. Eric, you obviously kind of run that, and even you had that great quote from, I think you said your CEO, where all the way up the chain of command is this idea of like we're testing all the way through. So I guess I'll just start with that. How do you begin to develop this culture where data, testing, and learning is just built into everything that you do each day?
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you can use your data properly, you let it speak for itself, right? And so, I think for some of us in the early days at Ancestry, there was this battle of convincing people that we should be doing it, but we would let good tests and data drive that. And every time we found one, we found a cool piece of data that we thought someone would really like, we shouted it at them. We took it right to them, we got them excited. We created champions of testing throughout the organization. And for us, it was really, we were beneficial that our CEO really bought onto that. And how our testing program even came to be was, we had one guy, this was before my time at Ancestry even, who said, hey, I want to try and do testing. No one had ever done it before. And he ran one test and it crushed it. And then people were just like, how do we get more of that? But then, you still have your naysayers, like I mentioned, some people who just don't get it. But then it's when you get those wins, when you get good data, you're just saying, hey, this is what the value of this really is. And now we're to a point where we don't do anything on our website that hasn't been tested. That culture is so pervasive. And I think you see big tech companies, you see the ones that really win, they are that data-driven, like Amazon or Netflix or Spotify. It's all about that data. So it's convincing people that if you want to be like them, you want to play with those that level, sure, you got to test and you got to have data.
Absolutely.
I think it's also one thing that's been really helpful for us is, especially in hiring, you can't hire the people above you most of the time, but the people below you, trying to hire for curiosity and not trying to hire mentalities that kind of have their minds made up, but people who are relentlessly looking for something. And you can start to attract that through your I would say the way you market positions at your company. I mean, we have a whole library of experiments that we put out there, and people who are attracted to that, they come here, they go to those places, and just, I guess, showing, and even Eric, you coming here and speaking shows people hey, if you're interested in this sort of stuff and you want to work at a cool company that does that, that's marketing for Ancestry.com and the jobs. So totally. I think that getting the right people can help you build that culture faster, just because trying to find people who are curious. And then I also say, the forward question, can we test that? Yeah. A lot. Sometimes you'll hear a no from up above, but sometimes they'll be sure. And then you can get some data that you can run with. So trying to build buy-in from up above by, as Eric said, kind of giving them the opportunity to maybe be a hero and see their idea really does work. Yeah. So that's a great way to kind of build that buy-in from up top.
Yeah, I want to echo that curiosity thing. That is my number one attribute when we hire someone. That is the thing we look for most of all, is how curious do we think this? Our job postings say, they start out with do you find yourself taking multiple different routes home from work each day and testing how quickly each one of them take? Do you watch movies with IMDb up in front of you because you need to know what else the actors are in? I mean, things like that awesome. That you're going to attract someone who's really curious. Sure. And they're going to love this stuff so much that they're going to push your program forward and your business forward. So
we have a test called the Quality of Motivation Quotient. Mm-hmm. It's not ours. You can buy it, but it rates people on 3 categories, which is curiosity, perseverance, and decision pace. We've always found those to be really impactful at weighting whether someone might be a good fit.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, hiring is such a huge component of developing that culture. We have some employees shifting around, and we were just talking the other day about just even with the few people moving, it impacts culture so much. So being intentional in that process sounds like it's mission critical. For sure. One thing that I know firsthand just from my own experience working at a nonprofit, as well as people I've talked to at workshops that we put on and that sort of thing. One hard thing is when you have an A/B test experiment that bombs. is communicating that up the chain of command in a way that's going to be well received. Do you both have any tips on how to do that? How do you explain to a boss or an executive level that, like, hey, this loss is actually maybe okay because, as you were saying, it leads to learning? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, it is basically the way we talk. I talked about it there, and it's like the way I communicated is we didn't lose, we learned. Like, we saw a negative result against what we would have hoped, but like that is so valuable to us. There's no such thing as a loser. And so even when you're talking to executives, they understand that, right?
Sure.
And even your leadership, they understand, that like data is valuable. At least mine do. I think most do. And so if you can communicate in a way that says, "Hey, this didn't hurt us. This helped us."
Right.
I think people really gravitate to that, and they want that too. So that's the way I found that it works best.
Sure.
There's a difference too in saying we lost or this test lost, and our customers or donors or constituents or whatever, like, this is how they reacted to what we put out there, right? So I think there's like I think sometimes there's a nervousness in communicating that, because it's like saying I'm a loser versus like this is what happened, right? It's objective, and I think that the type of people who we talked about who you're trying to hire who are like resilient and like come back, aren't knocked down by that. They're not going to be fazed by it, but a lot of times hippos or C-level people, like they want to minimize, as you said, they want to minimize loss. Like loss avoidance is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And so painting it not as a loss, like Eric said, but as something that you're sort of objectively putting out there, and you're actually researching and gaining insights from your customer, and then expounding on those insights. And I've always found that having the next test when you present that, like, we ran this, it didn't work, so here's what we want to test.
Yeah.
And like challenge them to say no to that.
Sure. Rather than putting your hands up saying, I don't know, we lost, well, we have no
Yeah,
forward
we'll go back
solutions.
to the drawing board. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. No,
Right.
but if you're here.
You're right.
And if you legitimately say to them, "Hey, let me tell you what would have happened had I not done this," right? Like, I think that really helps them understand. So
Sure.
we talk about that too.
Especially with some of your new designs, right? It's like you get this new design, it looks pretty, you put it out there, but what if we had just rolled this out?
Exactly.
So the fear of loss can go the other way too.
Yeah.
With, we successfully mitigated risk by only showing this to half the audience.
Yeah, that's cool. Some Jack Nasher techniques of negotiation there. That's awesome. Jeff, one thing that you were talking about in your session is, looking at M&R benchmarks, some of the studying that we have done, the research that we've done, and seeing that 83% of people that hit a donation page don't give. One question that I was kind of thinking of as you were talking about that, and thinking through it as you were talking as well, how much can optimization on a page fix that problem? Or are there other issues that maybe could be more pervasive in an organization beyond just on-page optimization? So what's the expectation that you can have in your on-page optimization?
Well, I think the question is, there's two ways that I look at that question. One is like, is a 1% difference worth it to you? If it's not, then you probably don't care about it enough to actually try the test, right? But the other thing I would think is it matters a lot how people get there. Like someone arriving at the sales page or the destination or the donation page is a product of marketing. They're not, most of the time, coming in, never heard of you, and just going straight to that page.
Sure.
But what we find is like people use a sales page while they're shopping, like they're in consideration phase. And a lot of nonprofits, especially who we work with, they're just happy to have a donation page up. Right. It doesn't matter what's on there. Like, it's up and it works. It can accept the gifts that are coming in. And what they sometimes don't understand is that people are very much still making their decision even while they're sitting there. And you think they're at the bottom of the funnel, but they're actually, still somewhere in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But I think that the real question is like, back to your question, that 83%, how much could we actually affect that through landing page donation testing? I don't think it can all be solved with a landing page. I think some of it has to be better marketing. Like, you got to get more motivated people to show up in the first place. You can't take someone who's cold or distant from the organization and expect them to just, have lightning strike on the spot and be
Sure.
a completely sold donor at that point.
Yeah.
But I think landing pages, donation pages can often be where it starts, because those are some of the insights that you start where people are making that decision. Then you kind of bake those in as you get to the outer rings of your marketing, if that makes sense.
And maybe they trigger a new idea that you can test on a broader scale.
Sure.
Eric, what experience do you have in maybe more like longitudinal type of testing, maybe just beyond a specific landing page?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you look at it is, there's people coming to your website that are never going to do what you want them to do no matter what. And then there's people who are going to do exactly what you want to do, what they want to do, what you want them to do, no matter what you do.
Right.
Like they're just, they're going to get through it somehow.
Yeah.
And then there's that middle area, and that's the people we affect, right? And so like, there's no such thing as 100% conversion rate because there's people that are just never going to do it. And so we look at, hey, if I can take someone who's on the edge and turn them, that's exactly the purpose of this optimization that I'm trying to do. But like, I also recognize there's a lot of people I'm just never going to affect. And so you just kind of have to accept that and then look for what are the attributes of those people we think that are right there in the middle, that the language that's going to work just for them. And athletes are going to drink Gatorade. Like you don't really have to sell it to athletes,
by a
right?
contract or something,
right? Like sell it to normal people.
Yeah, I saw an interesting experiment one time at another conference where they showed different experiences on the sales page based on how many pages someone had visited before they got there. And so like the people who do come and click buy now, and basically like they'll spend less than 2 minutes on your site. They're in, they're out, and they bought. Their methodology basically was like duck and get out of the way and then try to maximize value, as opposed to like, hey, like this person is obviously bouncing back and forth between pages on our site. They've racked up a score. They had a thing that's called page score. They've racked up a page score of like 10 or more. Like they're sitting here like trying to make a decision.
Right.
Those are like that movable middle that you're trying to actually get over the hump.
Yeah.
Like the bottom quartile or 30% or something like that. Like those people might never give, and maybe you can't get it to 100, but maybe you can get it to where 70% of people make a gift, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say to that is like, I think a lot of times we get confused about how important certain changes are. Like, I've done a lot of image testing in my career, because people will bring in a new image, and frankly, I haven't seen it succeed a ton. And so like, there's different, and it's different for every company. I think you figure out, you create a scale, the things that matter most for your business have the biggest lifts versus the smallest lifts. For example, I'd say, for me, copy is relatively small, at least as I've shown in my testing. If I change the price, that's the number one thing that's going to drive people, right? And so like, understanding for your business, what are the most important things? Is it that headline? Is it that hero image? Is it, where I place the button? And then optimizing around those things. I think every website is different, but just understanding those movers for your business and then, optimizing to those. But
yeah. So we have a lot of people watching, even here, who likely haven't run a test ever in their life before, and maybe have heard your talks and say, I need this, but I barely even know how to get started with that. Where do you begin? Like, where's the baseline to start testing? Where's the most, what areas have the biggest potential to actually start seeing, positive changes?
I think you have to start at data. You have to understand like who is showing up where and what's happening. A lot of times, we see a lot of people who start a test on a page that has a really relatively high conversion rate, and they're disappointed because they're not able to move the needle at all. Like nothing happens, and sometimes nothing can be worse than something bad happening. Yeah. So they can get demoralized. But I think understanding first of all the objective, the metric that you're trying to move, and also understanding where traffic is showing up. I know Chris Mercer is going to talk about Google Analytics later today and developing those reports. But understanding who's coming to you, where they're coming from, and what possible motivations they might have, and then trying to develop a hypothesis based off of that.
Sure.
With something that you can move.
Cool.
So I would say, in my experience, the place I would start, and this is, hypothetical, it works for me, maybe not work for everyone, is what we call existence testing. Should something be on that page or not? So like really simply, if you're looking for what are your first tests, what's the first thing I want to try? I say just show and hide a bunch of things. Yeah. And then see what matters to your audience, right?
Interesting.
And so it's just a simple thing. Like it's probably one of the easiest tests you can set up as well.
Right.
Just take and hide a div on your page. Just hide a section.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, does this even matter to my audience? And so if I was starting looking at a page and I was saying, I don't even know where to start, run my first test, just pick one of those and say, I'm going to put this away and see if it matters.
Yeah. That's
do
great.
A bunch of those.
That's great. That's super practical, and yeah, as you said, super easy to do, even just with Google Optimize and free tools that are out there too. So if you're a live streamer and you're listening, that's where you can start. Final question for you both. Do you have any just parting words of advice for someone that's trying to wrap up everything that they're learning at this event? They're trying to see real lifts. What parting words of encouragement do you have for our listeners?
anytime there's a fire hose of content, it can be really overwhelming of where to start. But just pick one thing. Try one thing.
Yeah.
You know, one thing is better than none thing. And I just think that it's easy to get lost in the tyranny of the urgent and like go from this place where you are kind of sequestered away for a little bit and then get back in and totally forget about it. But like take that one thing back. Like we're going to go back and do this, right? And if this helps us, that's great. If it doesn't help us, that's okay too. But just identifying what that one takeaway is that we're going to do, and see how it changes your organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would say you need to be testing. And even if it's the most rudimentary, simple thing, you can set up, get a test out there, get some data, and let the data drive your business in the direction that it goes. And don't give up on it if it doesn't work. Again, iterate. Like just keep trying. There is so much value in testing. It is literally how businesses like mine, others succeed.
Yeah,
they use that data. So just
if you're not testing, you better be right.
Yeah, it's impossible for you to be right all the time. Like
Sure.
that's the thing. We talk about this all the time. Like, let the data talk. We do this debate, right? Internally, I think this will work. I think this will work. We always, let's test it. Let's see what happens. And as long as that's your mantra, you just do testing. Let the data talk. You're gonna be fine. So.
Great. Well, thank you both so much, both for your sessions and for making some time to answer some questions. Really appreciate it. Let's go get some lunch. Live streamers, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back in just a few minutes with some brand new sessions for you. Again, this live stream is only made possible by Network for Good. We're super thankful for them, and we'll see you very soon.